Hello, year 6. So English time, not going to bother telling you the date again. Firstly, you can read it, it's just there. Secondly, I already did that during Big Read. So, starter for today, for us to have a bit of a look at, nice and simple in terms of understanding what you need to do. All I'd like you to do is I'd simply like you to match the prefix to the correct word to make the new full word. You don't need to draw this all out. You can just write the completed word together, or write the prefix with a little arrow and then the root word that goes with it to create the new word. Don't mind how you do it, but I'd like you to connect up the prefix with the root word, please. When you've done that, start the video up again. I'll show you what the correct answers were. Speak to you in a second. Okay, so we have got, oh, there we go. Oh, there's an extension. There we go. That's why that's there. So before I've gone over the answers, if you did that really quickly, have a bit of a go at thinking of as many words that use each of those prefixes as you can. So obviously you've got now one word for each prefix. See if you can come up with, let me see what's a good challenge. See if you can come up with 5 words for each prefix, more if you can. See if you can do that. When you've done that, start the video up again. Well, actually, you can let the video play now. You can know the answers to this before you do the extension, and then you can have a go at the extension. So, I thought I'd put arrows on. I clearly haven't. So I'll go over them anyway. Re would go with do for redo. D would go for frost for defrost. Miss would go with understood for misunderstood. Im would go for immature, double M for immature. And ill would go with legible, double L for illegible. That's all of the correct answers. And don't know why I didn't put the arrows on. Normally I do. Anyway, pause the video now, have a go at that extension, see how you get on. We'd look forward to seeing those. When you've done that, start the video up again. We'll recap yesterday's lesson and then we'll get on with today's learning. Speak to you in a second. Okay, so a bit of a recap then of yesterday's lesson. Yesterday, we were looking at the use of semicolons to connect main clauses and to connect lists that contain more than one word. This one is an example where we've got the list. To become a better sports person, you need to follow certain rules, semicolon. Always commit fully to your training, semicolon. Observe others and learn from their strengths and their weaknesses, semicolon. Maintain a healthy and balanced diet. And because we're no longer listing, this is the last one, set yourself a challenging but manageable goals. So that one is listing items of more than one word. We also looked at connecting 2 main clauses. It seemed like an absolute age since the schools had been fully open, semicolon. They had been closed since December, but it felt like much longer. And that is an example where we are connecting 2 main clauses. We're getting very nearly at the point now where we're going to be doing our planning for our hot write at the end. Well, we've got this week and then we'll be planning for the hot write. It's really important that you are remembering each of the things we've covered, because I will be looking for all of those things in your hot write. So make sure if you've not understood, you've either asked me a question or you've asked Miss Barrett a question on Dojo so that we can get back to you to make sure you do understand. So today then, we're looking at correctly punctuating direct speech. And that's the WALT. Direct speech just means when it is the character saying it directly. So that's when we need the double inverted commas. What I'll be looking for is that you're punctuating your direct speech accurately, that you're integrating speech in a range of different ways, and that you're using speech to engage the reader. I think most of that is fairly self-explanatory. Punctuating it, that means using the double inverted commas and putting commas themselves in the right place, and also then making sure that you're punctuating your full sentence correctly as well. Integrating speech in a range of ways, that means not just always having it before you saying Elliot said, but having that bit breaking it up sometimes, that bit preceding it at the beginning. So integrating it in as many different ways to keep it as fresh and as interesting as possible, and not just falling into the trap of having a big long page full of speech with no real narration. You must have that narration in the narrative, otherwise it just becomes a little bit tedious. And using speech to engage the reader, well, that's making sure that, as I've just said there, that you're not making it boring, that it is engaging and exciting and entertaining for the reader. So, 2 characters here. We have Elliot on the left there, and on the right, we have a character named Thanatos. Now, Thanatos is an interesting character. He is the antagonist to Eliot's protagonist, the bad guy to Eliot's good guy, and he is prisoner 42. So, what sort of speech might we expect to see coming from these two characters? We might expect to see Eliot saying something like this. You can't do this. You have to let Virgo go. You promised that you would. Of course, Thanatos, being the antagonist, being the bad guy, we might not expect him to go along with that. We might expect him to argue. I don't have to do anything. I promised, but I never swore on the sticks. So, we've got some speech there. Got some speech from both characters, in fact. So, how would we take this speech from the speech bubbles that we tend to see in comics, when we tend to see that in much younger children's books, and use that in our narrative? How do we take it from the speech bubble form to converting that into a nice bit of direct speech in a narrative? Let's have a bit of a look how we could do that. So, we've got Eliot's speech there. We've got Thanatos and his lines just there. And what we do is we take the speech directly from those speech bubbles and we surround it with our double inverted commas. But because Eliot's sentence, I've not done the whole thing all in one go, I've just taken his first sentence where he says, you can't do this, you have to let Virgo go, and I've broken it up, we put a comma inside the speech quotations. And then we can say exactly how Eliot said it. You can't do this, Eliot groaned in protest, the narration coming through, the narrator's voice. Then a comma, because we're going to go back into the speech. You have to let Virgo go, exclamation mark. That's fine. You can have speech, you can have punctuation within your speech marks if it's more than one sentence being said. That doesn't matter at all. You promised that you would. And again, because there would then be an exclamation mark, we would then put the full stop or the exclamation mark inside our speech quotations. Then we start a new line if we're changing to a new speaker. And in this case, we are changing to a new speaker. We're changing to Thanatos. I don't have to do anything. And again, we have a comma, because as you can see in Thanatos' speech bubble, he's not finished speaking. We're breaking up his speech to have some narration, so we only put a comma. We don't need to put a full stop, even though inside his speech bubble, it is a full stop. Because we know he's going to go on to speak, we replace that full stop with a comma. We then go on to say how exactly he said that. Thanatos argued, smirking at the helpless mortal. Thanatos argued is still a front adverbial, so it still needs a comma. We then have smirking at the helpless mortal, comma, because we're going to go back into the speech. I promised, but I never swore on the sticks. And this time you'll see that we have put the full stop inside the inverted commas because Thanatos has finished speaking. We've then got everything he said in his speech bubble. So, a couple of rules then to go over just to remind you before we move on to the first task. Your speech must have some form of punctuation before you close your inverted commas, before you close your speech. So you open them with the two inverted commas, you say what is being said. If the person has finished speaking, completely said what they want to say, and it's not going to go to a new speaker, and it is going to go to a new speaker next, then you will then put a full stop or an exclamation mark or whatever, or a question mark inside the inverted commas, then close the inverted commas. Remember, any speech that is opened must be closed. If, however, you're going to interrupt that speech with some narration, like I've done here several times, and say how it is being said, then that speech is going to continue. So you put a comma inside the inverted commas for the direct speech, close the direct speech, say your bit of narration, in this case, Eliot groaned in protest, open your speech again with those inverted commas, and then carry on writing it. Sorry, just before you open your direct speech, you also have a comma. always have a comma before you open any direct speech, unless it starts your sentence. So lots of rules there, but none of them are new rules to us. We've done direct speech before, so none of them are new. If you're unsure of any of that, stop the video, go back to the start of this slide and watch it through again. Then have a go at this next task, because this next task will help you understand. It's designed not to be a real challenge. It's designed just to get that fresh in your head. So let's check then how much we're understanding. All I want you to do is look at those two sentences. You can see me at the bottom there. I am the champ. Don't know what that noise was. That's apparently a championship noise. And I've said that I just know I've got all my sentences correct. Your task is simple. Can you prove me wrong? Have I got all my sentences correct? More importantly, if I haven't, what have I done wrong? So, two sentences for you to have a look at there. Think about all of those rules we've just talked about, and then have a go at explaining, if I've got something wrong, what is it I've got wrong and where is it? Pause the video, have a look at those, correct any mistakes that I've made. Speak to you again in a moment. Goodbye. Okay, no idea why I said goodbye, by the way. I'm so obsessed with this idea of always saying goodbye when I finish talking. It's just because how I always finish my videos. Going mad. Lockdown's sending me mad. Obviously, I'm not right. I've not got all of my sentences correct. There are mistakes there. In that first sentence, if we have a look, that exclamation mark should be inside the speech quotation, should be inside those inverted commas. And it isn't, so that's wrong for a start. I should then have a comma after he announced as she walked through the door. In the second sentence, I've not opened my speech. I've closed my speech, but I've not opened it. So that's wrong right from the beginning. And there should also be a comma after asked Claire. So I'm not wrong. I have made mistakes, and we all do. But if you've spotted them, that suggests that you understand the rules of direct speech. So you shouldn't be making those mistakes yourself. So, as I say, I just know that all of my sentences are incorrect. So, similar again this time, this task. 3 sentences there, A, B, and C. I just want you to explain what's gone wrong in each of them, because something has. I've got them wrong again. And all you need to do is work out what it is that's wrong. When you've done that, rewrite them, start the video again. Speak to you in a moment. Okay, so several things wrong there. Oh, let me just go back before I set you the main task. Firstly, well, we've looked at the welcome home. The exclamation mark should be inside, and then there should be a comma after announced. It just isn't fair, and that should then be a comma at the end of it just isn't fair. Frowns Susie, comma, with her arms crossed. And where has she gone? Question mark. That's all fine, it's inside the exclamation mark. Asked Claire should then have a comma, but again, the speech hasn't been opened. So it needs to have an inverted commas before where has she gone. Your main task then today, maybe move my face over there. Your main task is to write a scene using the correct speech punctuation. You should use speech and narration so that you're explaining how each bit of speech was said. And I'd like you to try and integrate speech and narration, sometimes having the narration split the speech up. And then finally, having a go at experimenting with different ways of using speech and narration, with the narrator detailing things, how things are said at different points, before, middle, and after. They should actually be green, orange, and red. Using speech and then narration, explaining how it was said, that is your green task. Integrating speech and narration, sometimes having the narration split the speech, that is your orange task. And the red task is that bottom one there, experimenting with different ways of using speech. The scene that I'd like you to write out with lots and lots of speech used with correct speech punctuation is a scene where Thanatos, Virgo, and Elliot are in the cave. Thanatos is arguing with Elliot about letting them escape whilst holding Virgo by the hair. And I'd like you to sort of detail the argument that the three of them have, showing that Virgo is in pain and that Elliot is beginning to panic. Read over chapter 7. I know we've not fully read over it yet at this stage of the week, but you can read the full chapter. If you've read the full chapter, you'll have a much better idea of this scene. You're sort of rewriting this scene, but just with speech. I don't need loads of description about the cave, loads of sort of setting and character description. We're just focusing on the speech and those three different levels of challenge. I hope that makes sense. Message me if it doesn't. The sooner you message me, the better, because that way I can get on it before you start and before you sort of find loads of issues. But I'm sure you won't. You're very good with speech normally, and we've done it a few times. So I'm looking forward to seeing lots and lots of perfectly precise speech punctuation. Speak to you tomorrow with tomorrow's big read in English. But for now, that's everything from me. Goodbye.